of 8th of August, and I open the meeting and welcome councillors. Councillors Andrew McPherson and Stu Kneebone are in attendance. Stu Kneebone online and Andrew in the chamber. And we also have an apology from Councillor Stu Husband. So I'll take a mover and a seconder for Stu Husband's apology. Andrew move and Stu Kneebone second. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. Now we go into confirmation of the agenda. There is one item, item 4, which I'm advised will now move into public excluded. So that's item 4 will be moving into public excluded for the full item, including discussion. We have one item to consider in public session and the rest will move into public excluded. So with that, I'll have confirmation of the agenda. I'll move confirmation of that agenda, seconded by Stu Kneebone.
Yep.
All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, carried.
No, I'm against.
All right, so we have one Andrew. Do you want it recorded? Yep. Yeah, Andrew McPherson recorded as against. And that's relating to the item moving into public excluded, I guess. So now we move to disclosures of interest. Any disclosures of interest, particularly related to the items before us? There being none, we'll now move on to the item New Zealand Defence Force Syndicate contract extension with BP for retail and bulk ground fuel. And I'd like to invite, is it Aston going to, Aston's going to talk to this, yes, with Janine?
Mr. Chair, if I could just maybe introduce the paper and then if there's any questions that members have, Aston or online.
Thank you.
As well. So thank you. Good morning. This is effectively seeking an extension to the Council's participation in the New Zealand Defence Force retail ground fuel purchase agreement for a further 5 years. The estimated value of that contract is 1.45 million. Paragraph 6 of the report just notes over the last 3 or so years the total purchases that Council has embarked on with total costs of 989,000 but total savings achieved through this contract of 265. Just note that this is the contract that most other councils participate in for any of their fuel purchases, and obviously the total volumes purchased under this agreement are significant across a number of government agencies. Thank you.
All right, I've got one question before I open it up for councillors. Item 3 on the paper, can you inform us as to who might get the member benefits quoted there?
Nikki or Aston, can you clarify the member benefits?
The member benefits here are the ones, the agencies, the participating agencies. So under this agreement, so we are one of the participating agency.
Right. So yes, we'll just repeat that. So what you're saying is that the member agencies, including ourselves, get the benefits. What I'm interested in is, given that there are member benefits, what are they and how does this council realise those benefits and who gets them?
So, I mean, if you go to point number 9, there you have the car wash,
Yes.
which is added, which is one of the member benefits.
Right.
There's a discount.
Yes.
And again, discount is applied on each of the different fuel types.
So I just want to be clear so that everybody's clear. The only benefits that council's going to pick up are the discounts on fuel and the car wash. There's no other benefits.
From this contract, there isn't.
Right. So that's very clear to me. Thank you for that clarification. Councillors, any questions?
Just a quick brief one.
Yes, sure. Stu?
I'm assuming we can get bulk fuel allows us to use this for our diesel powered pump stations as well. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah,
That's correct.
yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew?
So I've highlighted two things in this paper. The first one was yours. The answer doesn't do it for me about members' benefits. Let's be really clear here. Is there any way that staff can use access to a BP facility to enjoy the benefits under this contract for their own private use?
As far as I know, they wouldn't be able to do that because it would be tagged to your BP fuel card. Nikki, please correct me if I'm wrong here.
So sorry, you take your BP fuel card in there and you're driving your own car. Does that mean that someone has to see that that's not a Waikato Regional Council car to stop that happening?
I think
For a
Nikki
car
would
wash?
have. I think Nikki. Yeah, sorry, Nikki would have more information on that.
I can answer that question for you. So
Who's
Nikki
that, Barry?
Hamilton.
Fleet Manager Nikki Hamilton, the floor is yours.
Thank you. We have controls in place so that you are unable to use your fuel card with your private vehicle, if that's the question, if I'm understanding your question correctly. There are controls in place regarding restriction of fuel types, literage that we have reports come through. And then we also audit those reports if there is something that we're unsure about and there's any slight red flags against our GPS within our vehicles. So there's multiple level of audits that we do behind it to ensure that that type of use isn't occurring.
Thank you.
So that answer doesn't do it for me either. So I'm sorry to drag you into the detail, but I want to know the detail of how you give us comfort that you can't use those car wash benefits on a private vehicle. Actually, what happens when you're in the station?
So when you have a fuel card, the fuel card is embossed with the registration of the vehicle. So when you take the fuel card up, the attendant is meant to audit the fuel card registration number that's stamped on it against the vehicle. And when that happens, is that if there's anything that it doesn't match up, they basically can decline that order or that process. So that would be the first step that would stop it. If a staff member was to use it, what would happen is behind the scenes with our reports that we get on fuel consumption and utilisation with those fuel cards, we would pick that up, but it would be done after the fact if it did go through.
It's not the fuel that I'm worried about, Chair. It's the ancillary. And for example, I don't know about you, but when I buy my car wash, the car attendant never ever looks at my plate. So there's no other system of control to stop leakage for car washes?
No, car washes are audited against the GPS. So if a vehicle is in that area and a car wash has been purchased, we link it that way.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's good. My second question is, when you look at the string of numbers in 9, what strikes you between 2021 and 2022 year to date? That string of numbers, something jumps out and hits you between the 2021 column and the 2022 year to date column. What might that be?
COVID.
Nothing? Nothing's odd in that column? For you, Chair.
But it's year to date though, isn't it, Mac?
Sorry, who's that speaking?
That's Stu.
What did you say, Stu?
It's a year to date. So what date does it go to? Because unless you know, you're not comparing full years.
No, but take a look at the ratio between 2022 year to date to 2021 and the ratio of the same for unleaded. And unless there's some seasonality in the consumption, there's something different in the way we're consuming fuel. What might that be?
Nikki, do you have an answer for that? Sorry.
Yes, sorry, I did raise my hand, but I wasn't too sure if I should speak straight away. We do operate in peak seasons, you are correct. So we do have a high fuel consumption at certain times of year through our peak season, whether it be for diesel is different, for our bulk is also different. So we have peak seasons normally through November through to March for our unleaded and diesel road fuel, and then obviously through our winter periods for our bulk fuel.
So I thought that might be driving this. So then I look at the number and I think, well, we're 3,000 over 5,900 into the year to date for unleaded. So I'm assuming that we're not anticipating buying a lot of unleaded fuel in the Christmas period. Is that right?
Nikki?
We do, we do have lower consumption through the Christmas period, but most of those vehicles are based on salary sacrifice vehicles, so I don't have control with those figures. It's most of our SUVs and utes are diesel driven, which is about 90% of our fleet.
Okay, that makes sense. That's a good answer.
Thank you for that,
I think,
Nikki.
I think the paper should, this is a paper that probably is a little bit more nuanced than what's been presented, Chair. But anyway, those would be my questions. The only other thing I've got for this paper and for the next one too will be, so we're being asked to sign off on something because it's is it an extension or something, or a rollover, or what was the language that was used? Every other regional council or every other council uses it. That's not an excuse for not looking at a counterfactual. So at a very high level, was there any sort of counterfactual considered? For example, let me help you. Waitomo Fuel, Waikato company, based over the hill in Frankton. Did we go and have a chat to them? And what are the optics on the Waikato Regional Council supporting Waikato Petroleum? I mean, at the very least, those ratepayers have a right to expect at least someone would go and talk to them. So please tell me that someone at least went and spoke to them.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I was just going to note that, and Nikki, correct me if I'm wrong in saying this, but no, I don't believe that conversation will have taken place. I think one of the big considerations around suppliers in this area is accessibility for staff across the region. So you need to have a supplier that has a good spread and presence in all of the places that our staff are travelling to. It was my comment in terms of, so it is noted as a contract extension, and I know that there had been a discussion through the CoLab Shared Services Working Party around fuel contracts, and it was noted that this was considered best practice for councils in the region in terms of buying power.
Councils in this region.
So I can't speak to councils elsewhere, but the volume of fuel that is being purchased through this contract says that it is utilised widely. I can only reference the conversation that I had with my peers in the region when we were talking about fuel contracts, that this is the way that those councils purchase.
You would through you, Chair, you would expect them to say that.
Yeah. So what I'm picking up is this, that basically a substantial contract gains the best deals. And what appears to me is you have a lot of councils clubbing together, not just one council, but a number, who are then bidding for fuel discount. And if I'm correct, what I'm picking up is that this is all these councils, through their weight of purchase, are gaining an advantage which is quite considerable from what I've read. So would that be correct? Am I making the right assumptions, or am I wrong on that before I say Andrew to respond?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I think the purchasing that the councils are doing is actually probably peripheral to the main contract, which sees 65 million litres of fuel purchased every year through this contract. So
Right.
that's the sort of purchasing power that we are participating in.
Yes, understand.
But Chair, that's as plain as the nose on my face. I mean, so what? If you'd said to me, oh, no, we haven't clubbed together with our comrade councils to get volume, I would have been even more disappointed. I'm disappointed here because we're a political organisation. We have a startup company in our rohi that's trying to make some cut through. They've actually got a very good geographical spread of their outlets, and we haven't even shown them the good grace of going and having a conversation with them. And yet they are the innovator and they're the disruptor, and we didn't go and see them. The other thing is, how do we know that we might not have got a better deal by using more sophisticated technologies like fuel futures? If we've got so much volume, what we've done here, Chair, is we've gone and got all the sister councils and we've gone around the town. In fact, we haven't even gone around the town. We've gone and said, we've got a lot of volume, give us a price. Oh, and we're holding hands with the Defence Force or something. So
through you, Mr. Chair, can I just clarify? So we haven't gone with our sister councils through this. WRC has gone through the all of government procurement process for fuel. All I'm referencing is that this is the I guess benchmark that other councils in the region are utilising. So there has been no clubbing together through this contract extension. We will all be in different places, but we are all participating in this contract individually.
Do we have to use AOG?
I think there's a strong preference for that in terms of our procurement policy and approach, that if there's an AOG contract available, then that would be our first port of call.
Okay, first port of call. That tells me that there's a second port of call. And what I'm hearing in this paper is no one's gone looking for it. And no one's considered the local imperative, the political imperative. And Chair, I'm disappointed that we haven't done that. I'm not convinced that AOG always knocks it out of the park in terms of their procurement. And I do expect that when we're spending this sort of volume of dough, we at least have an attempt at testing the market, even if it's just, Janine, someone in your organisation or in the procurement department picking up the phone and asking to speak to the CEO of the fuel company who probably resides in our town. That's all. That's my disappointment with this paper, Chair.
Okay. Aston, from a procurement point of view, just some comment about, councillors' remarks?
All of government contract, as per the New Zealand government procurement policy, any Crown entity or local governments could use it. So as per the policy, it says if there is an all of government contract, then the recommendation would be to use that as the first option. And you can be flexible as well. So if you want to do it outside, you could do that as well. But all of government contract has its own benefit, as Janine just highlighted. And it's not just councils who are using this contract. There are multiple other Crown entities as well as universities using this contract. So yeah, and that's captured in our procurement policy as well. If there's an existing all of government contract or a collab-led joint contract, our preference would be to use that. The reason being it gives us the best value for money because it speaks to the economics of scales and we get a better discount compared to us directly dealing separately with another company. And I acknowledge the fact about your local, approaching the local provider. But in this case, since it's an extension of a contract which we were already participating in, New Zealand Defence Force extended this contract for another 5 years. So there is a last term in this contract. So once that term is completed, this all of government contracts would come to an end, and which means that they would again might go back to open market, or at that time we could do it separately and we could see if we're able to achieve those kind of results.
Thank you, Aston. Final comment?
Well, there might be a few more yet. So let's just play back what I heard you say. You said that we're not expected to book our brains in at the door when it comes to AOG. We can go and look at a plan B. So my question is, why didn't we in this situation?
I think it's, as I said, like all of government has gives us additional benefits with regards to the economics of scales and the percentage of discount that we get out of this particular contract. So if you note 0.7, we have a discount of 36.6% for 91 petrol and 40 cents on diesel. So I'm not quite sure whether we would be able to get that level of discount with our local provider.
And that's the nub of the issue. I'm not quite sure. That's the disappointing part of this, because I would have thought through you, Chair, that the theory of procurement would have gone and at least had a little bit of intellectual curiosity around it. And that's my disappointment. And I would like the minutes of this meeting to reflect my disappointment that Waitomo weren't consulted and that wasn't a counterfactual. Thank you.
Yes. Nikki, further comment?
Just an additional comment, just to pass some feedback. Part of my role in the fleet was actually to review a couple of additional things. So one was we did look at the Waitomo coverage that we had, and none of it Whitianga and those types of areas. And there were some other key areas that didn't offer it to us at that stage when I was reviewing it. I then approached the information or collected the information that we had from our other suppliers, Z and Mobil, to do a comparison of prices between the two firms on some transactions to see what the difference in discount was, if there was any movement more towards the other suppliers. And the BP contract on each time came out at a better discount.
They, just for clarification, Nikki, that discount, is it on their, typically BP have got a higher rate retail-wise than many. Is that discount applying that you speak of to the retail margin or to wholesale price?
So when I did it for each one, I chose transactions that had actually come through using a Mobil card and a BP card, because the difference I saw was that discounts did vary, because as you're right, BP was higher in some areas. Yeah. So what I did was broke it down to each unit price per litre at each site, and it came out being cheaper per litre rate, that we were cheaper on our BP syndicate agreement versus the Z and the Mobil that I did the comparison to.
Okay. Stu, Kneebone, any comment?
No, not really. I just did a quick squiz myself before, and we'd certainly struggle with Waitomo, as has been noted in the Coromandel, and I haven't checked other parts of the region, but I suspect. I mean, look, I've been in. I guess there's no ideal supplier in terms of accessibility, and I have been in with staff in the past where it's been a slight challenge to find a BP on a particular route, but I would imagine that BP are as accessible as the most accessible are, but I certainly think we'd struggle with Waitomo. But no, look, I'm comfortable, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
In relation to that comment, Stu, the whole point of my moot here is that if you picked up the phone and talked to Mr. Ormsby and said, we've got a little issue with Whitianga, I'm sure he would have fixed that for us. So I just want us to acknowledge there has been some good work done on this paper. I appreciate that. But when it comes to the end of this contract, I would expect our procurers to be a lot more inquisitive about what a counterfactual might look like. And the other thing is, I've been involved in the executive leadership team of an organisation that uses a lot of fuel, large farming company, and we use very creative purchasing techniques, including hedges and futures and derivatives and all sorts of sophistication around procurement to optimise the price. And I just hope that when this thing does come to an end, that a more expansive view of the procurement options is considered.
We'll note that comment.
Sorry, just could I just ask Andrew a question,
Sure.
Barry?
Sure, Stu.
What do you mean, Andrew, when you say Mr. Ormsby could fix the lack of supply outlets that Waitomo currently has on the Coromandel as an example? Because it's not just Whitianga. Yeah. In that time frame we're looking at.
Well, let's take BP, for example. You've got one BP store in Coromandel, and I'm not sure about Whitianga. What I was meaning is that man will know how to store fuel. Just because he doesn't have a fuel outlet, there might be another way of fixing the problem. For example, a 500 litre tow behind tanker that we may have access to. All I'm saying is, Stu, we've been shown there's been a lack of creativity and thought put into this, especially given the optics on what Mr. Ormsby and the family who own that company are trying to achieve. That's all.
No, thank you, Mac.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. So we've now had a good discussion on the item. We have a staff recommendation there, and I will take a mover or any amendment to that.
I'm happy to move, Mr. Chair.
Happy to move, and I'll second. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? Recorded? Recorded. Andrew's against. So we've now, I put that as carried. We now move into public excluded. Would you like to just briefly summarise the public excluded? It's up there.
Yeah, in advance of that, is this paper in the public domain now?
That one is. Oh, the other one, it is right now, but it's.
No, it got taken off the website.
Taken off.
How long was it up for?
It was up until last week.
How long was it up for?
Thursday, yeah. So it's been up all week. Yeah, since some Thursday, yeah.
So, Chair, do you really think...
We have moved to move it into public excluded, so I have to honour the fact that the committee has moved it into public excluded, so we can't discuss that particular item in the public. So we're now moving into public excluded. So this motion at the moment is nothing other than moving into public excluded, where we can discuss all the items. So, you know, we had that discussion earlier on about what items should be on the agenda. So we're now taking the item to move into public excluded. William, can you just cover off briefly the reasons why we're going to public excluded?
Before I do, we just need to move in a second.
Yes, I'll move. Stu, will you second?
Yeah.
Stu second. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against. Against there, Andrew. Yeah, sure. So carried, we're now in public excluded. It's going to take a minute while you reset it.
So Barry, the point I'm making is...
I understand.
I suspect that for the politically aware in election year, there'll be scrutiny of our website like you wouldn't believe.
I understand.
And do you not think we might have just scored an own goal here?
Well, we're going to raise that just immediately after you've made the comment, and then you're in public excluded, then we'll discuss that.
To protect information, whether making available of the information would be likely unreasonably to prejudice the commercial position of the person supplied who is the subject of the information across Section 72BII of the Local Government Act to enable council to carry on without prejudice or a disadvantage negotiation, including commercial and industrial negotiations. And this is under Section 72BI of the Local Government Act.
Right. So those are the reasons, and it's actually been moved, seconded and carried. So we're now in public excluded, and you'll take, William, a minute to get us into that.
Yeah.
So we'll now move